All right, we are going to go ahead and get started. Welcome. My name is Anna. I am the marketing manager at All Points North Lodge, and I am so honored to have you all here today. I'm sure we'll see more people trickling in throughout the event. So a couple quick housekeeping things before we start hearing from Jerusha. So first, we are All Points North Lodge. We are a mental health, addiction treatment, and trauma therapy campus and company. We have a campus in Edwards, Colorado, where some of our clients are joining us today, our clients and staff. So a special shout out to all the clients at the lodge. We also have an app for virtual therapy and virtual addiction treatment. It's called APN Connection. So special shout out to all of our alumni who are getting treatment, continuing therapy on there right now, to family members who may be on the app, and to just anyone who's getting services, their family members, their friends. We are so honored to have you here. If you're from Jerusha's circle or you've stumbled upon us through an ad or Instagram or whatever it is, we're also honored to have you. We are a company that's really devoted to helping people find their next step forward in addiction treatment or mental health, whatever that may be. Part of that is our treatment, and part of that is this. It's, giving people resources and inspiration and encouragement to know that you're not alone, that there is a way forward for you, and to instead of just telling you that, letting people share their stories who have been through things that you may have been through. So here we are. We're here for the virtual speaker series. Today we have Jerusha Greenwald. Jerusha is going to share her really fantastic story. She is, I believe, on the East Coast right now. And so she's hopping in from her home just to share about kind of growing up, the issues that she found herself facing, how they popped back up in adulthood, as I'm sure we can all just like really relate to. That happens to all of us, and how she navigated through that. So the goal is that you would be inspired and encouraged, and know that you're not alone. If you have questions for Jerusha or for us during this session, please feel free to drop those in the Q&A box. And you're also welcome to chat in the chat box throughout this event. Do know that your name will come up. So if you would like to be anonymous, sorry about the noise. If you would like to be anonymous, you can go ahead and change that name, just rename yourself in the Zoom. Just wanted to give you that heads up. So Jerusha is now, these days, she's working in marketing. She's very successful in social media and marketing. She's kind of just across the board, very impressive in the career that she's built. And I've come to find out is a really fantastic person through getting to hear her story. So I'm excited to have her here today, and I'm going to invite her in to get started.
Hello, how are you?
Good, Jerusha, thanks so much for being here today. Looking forward to letting everyone hear your story. So I'm going to turn my video off and take it away.
Thank you, Anna. That was quite the introduction. Hello to everyone. I would first like to start this off by saying thank you to the APN Lodge for allowing me to come here and meet you all, as well as for opening up this space to share a little bit about myself and my story. I truly hope that what I'm about to discuss with you today will resonate with you in some capacity, as well as at least one of you will hopefully feel a little less alone. So I'll start this off by saying a little bit about myself. As you already know, my name is Jerusha Greenwald. I live here in Orlando, Florida. I will be 30 years old next month, and although that may seem really young to a lot of people, it sounds really old to me. I know that a lot of you have my professional bio, so you know a little bit about me there. So because of that, I'll tell you a little bit about my personal one. I would say that I've had a very modest upbringing. I grew up in a very big family. I'm the second youngest of 6 kids. I've always had a job since I was 14. I always had a lot of friends, was pretty social and outgoing, and I had a great family and a great home life. When I originally signed up to do this, I honestly didn't think that it was something that would ever come to fruition. But after I jumped off the call with Anna and Emily, and they had decided that they wanted to move forward with me, there was only one 4-letter word that came to my mind, which I can't share here. I honestly thought, what on earth would I be able to talk to people about for this long? And why would people want to hear from me? I put it in the back of my mind. And then weeks later, I was lying in bed and it instantly came to me. I know that there is a lot about my story that I can share that relates to mental health. I, like a lot of people, have gone through depression. I've been divorced. I've been assaulted. I've had tumultuous relationships, friendships. I've gone through an eating disorder. I've gone through a lot. But to me, the one thing that stands out the most when it comes to my story, my mental health, my journey, is the word abandonment. It is the one thing that has truly affected my life, my personality, and my mental health to my core. So, abandonment. Merriam-Webster very simply defines abandonment as the act of abandoning something or someone and the state of being abandoned. If anyone here has experienced any form of abandonment, then you know what it feels like. It's this overwhelming feeling that causes so much anxiety because you are so worried that the people closest to you and the people that you love will end up leaving you. A while back, I made the biggest mistake and I Googled symptoms of abandonment issues and a lot popped up. I also realized that I checked off the majority of those symptoms and personality traits that were written down. They were 1, overly sensitive to criticism, 2, difficulty trusting others, 3, getting attached to people too quickly, 4, moving on from those people just as quickly, 5, difficulty committing in a relationship, and 6, working too hard to please other people. And of course, my personal favorite, blaming yourself when things don't work out. I sound like such a catch, right? I'm joking, but seriously, these are all spot on when it comes to me and my personality and everything that I've been through throughout my life. Obviously, I'm in no way a professional or an expert, but to me, abandonment is not something that really stands alone when it comes to my mental health. It's more of something that kind of hangs over me and sits heavy on my chest, kind of like an anxiety or a phobia. It's this feeling in the moment when something is not working out, or something is not going my way, or I feel like there's a lot of conflict, and I feel like someone has a hand on my heart and they just keep squeezing it nonstop. Like every time it happens, it just breaks me. And it's this overwhelming feeling of, oh, like not again. I would say that my story of abandonment begins all the way at the beginning, and it starts with the letter A, adoption. A lot of people have no clue that I'm adopted, and quite frankly, I prefer it that way. Why, you may ask? Because 50% of the people that I tell want to hear some tragic story about how my life started out, and the other 50% act as if me being adopted was an act of charity. Like my mom and dad have always said, we didn't adopt our children because we wanted to save them. We adopted our children simply because we wanted more and couldn't have any. My adoption was very much ordinary. It was right out of the hospital. I was never in foster care. And without a fraction of a doubt, I grew up in a home that was full of love, laughter, and I always knew that I was theirs. Sometimes when I tell people my story of being adopted, they honestly get a little bit disappointed. They want to hear something dramatic, they want to hear something big, and they want to hear something shocking, but that's not the story that they get. Regardless of my story of being adopted, all the emotional feelings are still the same. Adoption, if you didn't know, is a very complicated subject that I think is often misunderstood and accompanied by a bunch of myths and stigmas. There seems to be this narrative out there and a belief that adoptive parents saved an adopted child. And it's honestly hurtful for those who have been adopted, and it's honestly hurtful to me. There's also this belief that adoptive parents aren't their real parents, or that adoptees are not as loved as their birth children. Well, I can't speak about others or others' experience, but in my experience, this is something that is completely untrue. Adoption has been such a significant part of my life because I have come to know the feeling of abandonment since before I could even remember. Yes, I grew up in a home full of love. And yes, me being put up for adoption would be considered as an act of love. But that doesn't change the natural feeling of constantly being reminded that I'm different. I don't always feel like I fit in. I've never met anyone that has the same blood as me. I've never met anyone who looks like me. And ultimately, the feeling and belief that someone who was supposed to love me unconditionally and raise me had chosen to give me away and abandon me. That hits deep, and it always has. And quite frankly, I don't think it is a feeling that will ever go away. It doesn't in any way take away from the relationship that I have with my real parents, or take away from the fact that the ones who raised me are my real parents. But what it does do is create this space in your head where you always think that if my own mother couldn't love me, why on earth would anyone else? A lot of people may not know this, but adoption is something that is very complex, especially when it comes to your mental health and your overall happiness. You constantly feel like you don't belong anywhere, and your mental state and relationships suffer as a result. You are also always navigating feelings of loss and or questions about your identity and formation. Like I said before, every individual is different and every story is different, but all I can do is speak about mine. I have gone through a large majority of my life with these feelings or struggles, and it is because of those that I have made so many good and so many bad decisions throughout my life. I believe that deep down, we all need to belong to something. It is that sense of belonging that can ultimately have a significant impact on our lives. I think that belonging to something leads to overall satisfaction, your happiness, your mental health, your physical health, and even like lifelong longevity. It gives us our sense of meaning and also our purpose. Because of my abandonment issues, I've always felt that need 10 times more. Some of us who have experienced or struggle with abandonment also know that at the core of all that we want is to just belong. After all, we give these labels to ourselves and to others. You belong to your family. You belong to a sports team. You belong to a hobby or a club. You belong to a spiritual group, a charity, a political party, a city. These labels literally go on and on. With nearly every aspect of our lives organized around belonging to something, I think it's only natural to search for that when you want acceptance and feel like you're not alone. When you feel like you belong to a group, community, or a society, that feeling of connectedness can be one of the most fulfilling aspects of your life. It's the sense that you're close and accepted by your people, and it creates a deep sense of connection as well as belonging. If you don't feel like you belong to something, I believe that it creates serious issues when it comes to your mental health. Growing up, I've never looked like anyone else, and I've never acted like anyone else. And because of that, I've constantly felt like I didn't fit in or have my own community. So I consistently found my identity and belonging in situations or relationships where I had to constantly prove my worth. I found my identity and my sense of belonging in being the best at work, which I still kind of do, getting good grades in school, being the top of the class, and constantly trying to outperform myself in the last situation or thing so that I could, for just a moment, feel like I did something right and that I was accepted. Well, turns out later in life, I was building relationships with people that I had nothing in common with. I was finding my worth in things that I ultimately couldn't control. And I was becoming someone that was so far from myself that I completely ignored how it was affecting my mental health and also my overall happiness. Has anyone ever told you that the past is the past and it should never have any power over you? Well, for the longest time, I thought that was true. I'll take this back a little bit, about 7 years ago. Back in 2016, I had gotten a car accident that truly reshaped my entire life. I was about not even a mile from my home when a woman under the influence ran a red light, T-boned my car, and then fled the scene, leaving me to pick up all the pieces. In the moment that this all happened, it really didn't seem like that big of a deal. I got out of the car, drove it right home, went to bed, and just left it alone. But what followed after that has affected my life even to this day. I thought I had walked away from the accident with no injuries, but it was not even 3 days later, I was in the most pain I had ever experienced in my entire life. It turned out that the impact from the car accident created a kyphotic deformity in my neck and a pinched nerve in my lower back that caused me chronic pain all the time. If there's anyone out there who has experienced chronic pain, then you also know how much it can affect your life and your mental health as well as your happiness. I couldn't stare for too long. I couldn't sit for too long. I couldn't work. I was always in pain, and every single doctor's appointment that I had ended up with no answers or results. After years of doctor's appointments, trying to find some sort of relief, dealing with insurance companies, lawyers, and unable to pursue the woman who hit me, I was at rock bottom. I thought that I had done everything right up until that very moment. So why was I being punished? You may wonder why this was such a hard time for me. And honestly, the answer is really simple. Growing up, my parents have always taught me that I can do whatever it was that I can or want. I just have to put my mind to it. And if I was only willing to do the work. And to me, I had done so much in my life, and everything that I had was because I had put in the work. I bought my first cell phone. I bought my first car. I worked 2 jobs and put myself through college. I have been paying my own bills since I was 14. I started multiple businesses. And for the first time in my life, I couldn't do anything. I've always been able to accomplish mentally and physically whatever it was that I set my mind to. And for the first time in my life, I couldn't do either. It didn't matter what I wanted to do, I couldn't do it because I was physically incapable. Also, if anyone here has ever experienced chronic pain, you know that it is something like you've never imagined or experienced. On the outside, you're completely fine and you're completely healthy. But on the inside, you're in constant pain. Well, that constant pain gets to you, and it definitely got to me. Even while I was writing the speech and thinking about the pain, I burst into tears. It's something that still affects me to this day. I remember one night I was just lying awake, staring at the ceiling, and I legit thought to myself, why am I fighting so hard for this? Wouldn't it just be easier if I wasn't here? I was at the lowest point of my life and the most depressed I had ever been. Like a lot of people, I would say that I've neglected my emotional needs and mental health a large part of my life. On the outside, I've always been healthy. I've always gone to the gym, I've eaten well, and I've taken good care of myself. On the inside, I was neglecting pretty much everything. I never talked about my feelings. I didn't prioritize self care. I never really let people in. And I was always on the go and never took time to myself. Another aspect of having abandonment issues is the constant need to please others and make them happy. You feel like you always have to give more than you possibly can, and you have a constant need to please others and be liked by everyone. Doing things for other people and accommodating their wants and needs got me their attention, love, and ultimately their approval. And it was through doing things to please others for so long where I felt close enough to them and worthy of their love. As I got older, I felt that constant need to please other people even more. I simultaneously tried to make them happy, gain their approval, and help them in any way that I possibly could, despite what it was actually doing to me. I hated when anyone was ever hurt or upset and felt that it was my responsibility to come to their rescue and fix any of their problems. Before long, I was so in tune with other people's emotions that it became hard for me to know where mine began and theirs ended. Well, up until that time in my life and going through that accident, that was 100% me. And it was through being that person for so long that had left me feeling so depressed, so alone, and my relationships all felt draining and completely one-sided. In essence, it felt like I was just faking it, that I had built a life and a foundation for myself that truly wasn't authentic. It wasn't truly me. Divorce. It's the other thing that people don't know about me, but are shocked when they find out. Yes, I am divorced. Yes, this young. And yes, those were my exact thoughts going through that process too. Like I said before, I grew up in such a whole and loving family. Although no marriage is perfect and every relationship has their issues, I had a very realistic view of what it would look like. I'm definitely not the poster child of someone who would be divorced, which is why it's so shocking to some people when they find out. My wonderful parents have been together for over 30 years. My dad was a pastor. I grew up in a church. I waited until college to even date, which was my decision. So I never thought that divorce would be any part of my story. They say it takes a lot to make a marriage work, and trust me when I say it really does. Sometimes that work is often rewarding and fruitful. Other times, the work, struggle, and feelings are too much, and that marriage crashes and burns. When I tell people the age that I got married, they often tell me that is probably why I got divorced. Besides the fact that saying this is incredibly rude and offensive, it is also not even close to being true. The reason for my divorce had nothing to do with my age, but everything to do with the fact that I had no identity, no sense of belonging, no understanding of who I was as a person or what I wanted in order to make another person happy. I had neglected so many of my emotions and pushed through all my past traumas for so long because we were honestly so good together. And in order to get to that happily ever after, that I never actually sat back to realize who I actually was and what it was that I wanted out of a marriage or a partner. When you hear about divorce, I'm sure that there are so many things that come to mind. Well, what I can say about it is that a lot of it is true. You spend so much of your time building a life with someone, planning a future, and then it all comes to a screeching halt and it's all just gone. It is absolutely devastating. What they also don't tell you about divorce is how much you lose from it. You lose so much of your life. You lose your home. You lose half your stuff. You lose half your money, if not all of it. You lose half of your family. You even lose half of all of your friends because one half were your significant other friends, and the other half don't want anything to do with you now that they know that you're single and don't have another significant other. So there I was, divorced before 30 and starting all over again. Following my divorce, I saw a lot of things in a different light because a lot of things for me were just so brand new. When you lose half of your life, half of your friends, half of your progress, and half your identity, you start to care about things a lot less. You stop caring about what people think, and you no longer want to subscribe to relationships or situations that no longer serve you. You start to prioritize yourself in a way that you never did or thought was possible. And for me, it was the first time in my life where all I had to worry about was myself. It was in that moment of time where I became completely over everything that I had been doing in order to feel like I was a part of something, because everything that I had tried to control was just falling apart in an instant. I was over all of the BS, all of the drama. I was over pretending to be someone that I truly wasn't in order to make other people happy. I was over building relationships with people who only took things away from me. And I was over wanting to constantly be accepted or be liked. I was just done with all of it. That was one of my breaking points in the best way. And I knew it was my time to start over and become who I was truly meant to be. I finally realized that I had spent so much time in my life trying to be liked and accepted by others that I completely lost my identity and also my voice. I didn't want to fit the mold anymore. And quite frankly, I stopped caring about what other people thought of me or being liked. I was finally ready to be honest, embrace change, and become my true, authentic self. In the aftermath of divorce, it can be difficult to envision any kind of new beginning, and it's even harder to find a renewed sense of hope. For the first time in a while, everything felt so different. I was the same, but not really. The world felt new, but also welcoming of change. Everything was waiting for me to find my new story, and I was full with anticipation, excitement for whatever was to come. I would say what got me through those first few weeks and then months were my friends, my support network, and then also my work. I focused on staying active, getting hobbies, remaining connected, and I gave my all to my business and into building my career. Change, if you hadn't noticed already, is something that is not easy. especially for me. I have serious control issues, and I have built my entire life off of being structured. I wake up at the same time. I go to bed at the same time. I eat the same thing every day. The list goes on and on. The second that something is out of my routine or not planned, I pretty much have a full blown meltdown. Well, following my divorce, everything had changed and everything that I experienced was so new. I was in a place, I had completely different friends, I had completely different goals, and I started a completely new career. It was all exciting, terrifying, stressful, and at times not so much fun. But for some reason, I didn't want to resist this new chapter in my life. I wanted to embrace it, whatever it looked like. When a breakup is fresh and you're in the middle of it, it's hard to imagine change for the better when you're just trying to push forward from day to day. But time does have a way of changing things. And after some time, I was able to see the silver lining in the wreckage of my broken marriage. Finally, I was at a point in my life where all I had to focus on was me. And I knew that it was finally the time to unpack everything that I had been through so that I could start to live my life the way that it was meant to be and become a better business owner, a better partner, and a better friend. I remember the day quite clearly. I was out having dinner, connecting with a friend, and we were discussing things about our life, past experiences, stuff like that. After we were done with dinner and we were walking to our cars, they proceeded to say to me, "Wow, you've been through a lot." And then I thought to myself, wow, I actually have been. That was the moment where I realized the state of my mental health, the importance of self care, and how much of the pain in my life that I have been suppressing for so long. For the majority of my life, I have always acted as my own hero. I always managed my stress, anxiety, and struggles all on my own. Although this was not the best approach, I was always independent and never asked for help. I believe that life is full of cause and effect. A cause is considered as the origin of an event or condition, and the effect is the result of that event or condition. Sometimes the connection between the two is clear, but often it is very difficult to figure out what is actually triggering what. When you study hard in school, you will get a good grade. If you walk outside and forget your umbrella when it rains, you will get wet. If you break the rules, you will have consequences. If you neglect your mental health and traumas for too long, you're going to have breakdown. Well, I had been having plenty, and I knew I was at that point. While some are good and some are bad, it's crazy to think about the experiences and traumas that have an effect on your life, even down to the smallest decisions or memories. And my life has been no different. It was during this time that I finally realized how much my abandonment issues had impacted my life, from my relationships to my decisions, from my business to my divorce, all of it. Life is like a book, and sometimes we get to read our favorite chapters, and other times we feel like we're reading the same chapters over and over again. And I kept feeling like I was reading the same chapter over and over again because I truly hadn't processed or tried to understand myself, my mental health, my abandonment, and where I was coming from. I was just flipping through the pages of my life and just living through my emotions, actions, and circumstances while not actually feeling any of them. My life, like anyone else's, was always full of highs, lows, laughter, and tears. I had experienced moments of victory, defeat, failure, and also growth. Well, in this moment, I knew that this was my time for growth and also time for me to finally work on myself as a whole in order to finally enter that next chapter in my life. I tried to handle my relationship problems and abandonment issues all on my own, but my mental health issues just kept on getting worse and worse, and I finally needed to get better. This led me to finally seek help from an outside source, which is a therapist. I think it can be easy to push your feelings away and neglect your emotions after traumatic experiences, which is why it's even more important for us all to stay mentally healthy. Well, in that moment when I was talking with my friends, I knew it was my time to seek out help, work on my past, and also my mental health. For me, going to therapy wasn't something that was really out of the normal. It is something that a lot of people around me grew up doing, which is why for me, it was the only option that I wanted to pursue. I know that there are so many misconceptions about therapy, and to be honest, a lot of it isn't true. The reality is, for me, therapy is an incredibly useful tool that has helped me with a range of issues from anxiety to relationships to trauma. It is so much more than just sitting on a couch and talking about my feelings. It's about talking with someone who is on my side, understands me, and validates how I'm feeling. Going to therapy was never something that defined me. It is something that refined me. I also believe that it was not a sign of failure, but proof that I was being brave. Honestly, my journey going through therapy was quite simple. I knew the reason I was there, and I was ready to do whatever it was that I needed in order to heal and become my best self. I will say there was no ultimate moment of when I was cured or felt better. It was something that took time, it was gradual, and a lot of work. Even to this day, it takes a lot of work, but I am always willing to do it in order to be truly happy. So, abandonment. It's the one thing that so many of us here most likely have in common. The one thing that has defined my entire existence to my core, and the word that has summed up all of my life experiences into one. I even thought while I was writing this speech about how each letter of the word sums up an aspect of my life that truly reflects who I am as a person today. So, what does abandonment mean to me? It's my life summed up into 11 letters. A stands for adoption. It is where this has all started, and it is such a big part of my story, who I am, and unknowingly has impacted the way that I've lived my life and will continue to. For me, the answer has always been not to reject being adopted, but to embrace it. Although I have had some serious lows throughout my life, and being adopted has affected a large majority of those, overall, I've had such a positive outlook through it. I have the best parents a girl could ever ask for. I truly believe that I can achieve whatever I want as long as I work hard for it. And I've always known that whatever it is that has happened throughout life, I will get through it because I am fully capable. B stands for belonging, because there is such a crucial connection between our sense of belonging and our mental health. And it took me so long to figure that out and why I was so unhappy. When we feel like we have a sense of community and support, we often react more effectively to difficult situations. I spent so much of my life looking for my community, my place in the world to belong, that I never really realized that I already had one. But it was through the chasing of that sense of belonging that has given me the opportunity to challenge my core beliefs, practice self acceptance, and know that no matter what, I can always count on myself. A stands for acknowledgement, because it was such a big aspect of my journey and my personal healing. I used to say that my car accident had completely ruined my life, but now looking back, I now say it has only shifted it. I now realize that it was during this time that I had a moment to slow down, reflect, and acknowledge where I was at in my life, the person who I had become, and what it was that I truly wanted out of life and for those around me. N stands for neglect. I had neglected my mental health, my self worth, and my self love for so long that it had left me feeling so alone in such a negative space. It was during that time when I had finally realized that I had spent so much of my life brushing all of my past traumas, experiences, and emotions under the rug that I couldn't even acknowledge how much I had been through in order for me to move on and be my true authentic self. It was through that experience that I had to take a long and hard look at myself and realize that my people pleasing behavior wasn't because I only wanted to help others. It was rooted in emotions I have felt since childhood: abandonment and fear. D stands for divorce. Being divorced before 30 has taught me a lot. But what did it teach me the most? That in order to make anyone else happy, I needed to prioritize my own happiness and well being in order to be whole. Divorce, I wouldn't wish it on anyone, not even my worst enemy. But it was through that experience where I learned that my mental health and what I want should always be my first priority. O stands for over. Divorce is a profound, life changing experience. It's painful, it's confusing, and it turns your world upside down. But at some point, it's just over. And that's when your new life starts to begin. It was through letting go so many things that I was able to acknowledge my past, figure out what I want, and become the woman who I ultimately was meant to be. N stands for new, and all of the new things that divorce brought into my life. I learned going through this that it can be dangerous when we become set in our ways and not open to new opportunities or experiences. By being open to change, it means that you don't stay stagnant. Although new can be something scary, especially for me, it is what's needed in order to move on from your past and on to better things. M stands for mental health. I never thought about how my poor mental health really was because on the outside, I was so healthy. I worked out 5 days a week, had a very healthy diet, and was in the best shape of my life. But what I hadn't realized was yes, my physical well being was good, but my actual mental health was all over the place. E stands for effect because it was through recognizing my traumas and realizing how they were directly related to the consequences of my actions, I was able to accept my past, reconcile my mistakes, and move on so that I could be happy. N stands for next, and the next chapter in my life following my divorce and all of the positive experiences that it was going to bring. The story of your life is yours to write. There is no one else in charge of it. If you don't like the direction in which your story is unfolding, you can change it. You can't edit your life, but you can start a new chapter. And I decided to start my new chapter. T stands for therapy. My well-being is in my hands, and if therapy was a solution, then there is nothing wrong about that. It was through therapy that I was able to work through my trauma, understand myself, and finally be happy. So, where am I now? Going through therapy, I realized that the first step in overcoming my abandonment issues is understanding why I feel this way. I don't believe that it is something that will ever go away, but I do believe that it's something that now I am aware of it, I can manage it and my life so much better. I am mentally in the best space I've ever been. I have a job that I absolutely love where I'm truly making a difference. And I know that whatever happens in my life, it is all a part of a bigger plan. So I'm going to leave you with this. If you are in any capacity having feelings of abandonment or being alone, all I can say is cut yourself some slack and try to stop this harsh self-judgment. It's time to start working on your self-love. Work on maintaining friendships and building your support network, whether that's with friends, family, or at work. Your support network can make you feel better about yourself, help you find your belonging, and also your way. And it was my network that certainly helped me. Remind yourself of all the positive qualities that make you a good person, a good friend, and a good partner, because you've got this, and you're going to come out of this just like I did. From the outside looking in, you would assume that I've gone through life being someone who is outspoken, confident, and unafraid to chase my dreams, because that is someone who I am now. But that hasn't always been the case. What most people don't know is that I'm someone who has struggled with crippling anxiety, depression, and serious abandonment issues. But going through all of that has led me on a path to become someone who is truly unapologetic and unstoppable. I trust in God as well as the universe that I'm on the right path and my experiences were created in order to shape me. Although the unknown is something very scary, especially to me, I know that I'm on the right path and exactly where I am meant to be. I want to thank you all for opening up this space for me to come and share a little bit about my story, abandonment, and everything like that. Anna is actually going to come back in and do the Q&A with me. So if you have any final questions about me, my journey, or experience, feel free to put them in the Q&A box now.
Thank you so much. Gosh, I'm blown away, even kind of having, read your outline and knowing what you were going to talk about. And there is so much to that story. Like you said, you've been through so much, but there's also like so much hope wrapped in it, even when you were talking through the things that were so difficult and really raw, there was always this thread of hope. Like I always knew that I was waiting for, how things turned around. And I think that's really amazing.
Yeah, there's always a rainbow on the other side.
Yeah. Sometimes far on the other side, but definitely there.
Yeah, it's really far, but it's there.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. Well, we have a couple questions that have come in, so we'll spend a few minutes just talking through these questions. Let's see. Okay, so first question, how early do you think you realized that abandonment issues were affecting your life?
Oh, wow, that's a really good question. I would definitely say Probably after college, so really late in life. I think it's something that you're always aware of. Like I said, you always have that voice in the back of your head, like I mentioned earlier, where it's like, okay, my own mother gave me up. Like you just kind of have like a chip on your shoulder because of that. But you never really I never got to the root of the issue. Like, okay, this actually has to do a little bit further than that. And it definitely was abandonment. So I would definitely say not until my mid 20s. So not that long ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so interesting that you talk about that because there are so many times where, in our lives, we're like, I keep going through this pattern over and over and I can't figure out why. And it traces back to something typically. So
Yes, for sure.
Okay. Next question. This person says, I'm so used to trying to make sure that other people are happy. How did you start trying to distance yourself from that?
Okay, so this might not be the best advice, but it's my advice, and I think it's true to who I am. I think it's important to make other people happy, but at the same time, you can't pour into other people that aren't pouring into you. I don't think that's fair, and I don't think that's life. And I think it's your life and you're the one that should ultimately be happy. And I think it's important to build relationships with people in work as well as personal in any capacity that are giving you something in return. Otherwise, that's not a friendship. That's not a relationship. That's just someone taking something from you.
Yeah. Yeah. So off that question, we had another question that I saw. Let me find it. What do you look for now in a community? You said you kind of rebuilt your community. So what are you looking for these days in friends?
That is such a great question. Because to be honest, I woke up this morning and even before hopping on this call, and I had the most amazing text messages from all my friends who I posted about this on social media and I didn't even tell them personally. And the fact that they're even showing up today speaks volumes to their character. But what I look for now in a community is people who are like me, people who are like-minded, want the same things, and people who can stand alone like I can. Yeah. People who
So
are willing to give and not just take.
yeah, you can care for each other when hard times come, but it's not like constantly, it's not codependent, right?
Yes, correct. It's very independent. And I think that's important when it comes to relationships.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. How do you find ways to self-reflect? You're super kind of aware of what's going on with yourself. And even as you're processing things, you can tell that you've done a lot of processing of each of these events. So it says, how did you find ways to self-reflect? Like, do you journal or meditate or what?
So that's a really good question as well. I actually do all of it. So one thing that's actually weird about me is I love being alone at times. And I think it's really important, especially when it comes to your self-care and growth. So I do all of it. So I go to yoga. I also meditate. I go to church and I journal and I go to therapy. So I do a lot.
Yeah, you cover all the aspects.
Yes, I do all of it. So I think whatever it is where you feel grounded and you can regroup, I think, take solace in that.
Were those all some things, or were those all things that you did before you kind of started this journey of like therapy and figuring out who you were, or are some of those new since that?
I would definitely say 50-50. Obviously, going to church and having that relationship was something I've always done. And as well as like working out and being active is another form of self care. So that I've actually had since like high school, I would say. But when I was trying to become a little bit more self aware, I think I was searching more and I started yoga. Absolutely loved it. And then that's when I kind of started diving into like writing and journaling and therapy and just really actually like taking care of yourself.
Yeah, totally. That's great. I think sometimes those new things can be intimidating. You're used to the old things, but it's like, oh, yoga, this feels kind of strange. Or meditating, like I can't sit there for a couple minutes and think about, just like one thing. But okay. Oh, this is a good question. Do you still find it hard sometimes to overcome, let's see, that protective self-reliance and be vulnerable with yourself and others? And I'm assuming it's like after kind of having struggled with that.
Yes, every day. I still struggle with it. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's taken a lot for me to actually not be open with people in a way where it's like I don't tell them anything about my life, but actually tell them like what's going on in my life. But now I'm a lot more open. But it's a constant struggle because for me, I'm very independent and I will always be independent, but there always has to be that balance of, you know, being able to lean on someone, but also, you know, be
Yeah.
with yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I was talking with someone the other day and they said, like, how do you know when you're healed or like when you're better? And I think that's like you mentioned, it's that little by little progression. It's not like you hit a day where you're completely better and yesterday you were completely struggling. It's just like improvement overall. And that's helpful because then every win is a little bit of healing. It doesn't have to be this big event.
No, not at all. It's a journey. It really is.
Yeah. Um, okay. One one more here. Is there a message that you wish you could have shared with like the 5-year-old version of yourself or the 15-year-old version of yourself? It says, what would you tell little Jerusha?
What other people think about you doesn't actually matter
Mm.
because you are going to grow up and be so awesome. That would be my advice.
Yeah, that's good. Sometimes like when we're feeling like the little small scared version of ourselves, like that's what we need to hear, right? Like
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
got this. Yeah. Well, Jerusha, thank you so much. I know and I say this, but like I really am touched by your story. And I think that there are so many, aspects of it that you touched on that like I could relate to one part, someone else watching may have related to the other part. And I just have a lot of like I feel really encouraged by your journey and your even that like this is something you started kind of recently, like you said mid-20s. You don't have to be like a built-in really good at analyzing yourself and all of that in order to heal. It can be a new like completely new thing for you and you can create this like new better life, and I think that's really amazing. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. And honestly, thank you for opening up this space. It really has been such a pleasure.
Yeah, of course. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us as well. Jerusha's talk will be on social media tomorrow, probably. So if you have someone in your life that could really benefit from being, if they don't have people in their life that can relate, maybe you can send Jerusha's talk to them and say like, hey, I watched this speaker and I think she's been through some of the same things that you've been through. And maybe this will resonate and make you feel less alone. It's what this is here for, right? So don't just stop there. Kind of maybe you're meditating on something that she said, maybe you're sending it to a friend. We want this to be a resource for everybody. It's free, so go ahead, use it, send it. And yeah, join us back here next month. We'll be announcing our next speaker pretty soon, and you can register on our website at the speaker series page. And we will see you all very soon. I hope you have a phenomenal day, and I hope you go encouraged. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.